The introduction of the Sega Genesis into my gaming fold had brought about significant changes to how I viewed and experienced the hobby. With the NES, I had been a child completely oblivious to the rest of the world, relying on my parents for the odd games I'd get and the generosity of friends to lend me pretty much everything else I'd play. That all changed with the Genesis. I had gotten older, began reading magazines more thoroughly, and started to understand the bigger picture of how and why games were made. One of these realizations came in the form of just how big gaming was in Japan, and the fact that damn near everything I was playing in the US was either made in or inspired by the Japanese. I had begun to pay attention to the advertisements of import game shops in the various publications, and really started to take notice that games and systems were often released in Japan much earlier than in the US market. I even saw games I had never heard of before. The problem was that ordering Japanese games and systems back then came with a premium. There was no such thing as free shipping in 1990, and the market was so specialized you had to tack on a good 20% or more to the prices you were accustomed to. Coming from a family that had not been financially stout, I knew that I needed my own source of fundage if I was ever going to breach the Japanese import scene. I was only 15 years old too, so finding someone to hire me was going to be a hurdle all by itself. My father had worked for a local hydraulic power wash company that did sandblasting and power wash services. They had an opening for a part-time position that summer, so I applied and spoke to his boss. I told him I'd work hard and be reliable, so he hired me at the then standard $3.80 an hour. I was now ready to finally enter the Japanese gaming scene. The first game I had wanted had been the Mega Drive port of the arcade hit Strider. I had been mesmerized by the CPS-1 powered Capcom arcade original, and the prospect of an accurate home version appealed to me like you wouldn't believe. I set my sights on it and ordered it for $80 at its Japanese launch, with shipping making it a $100 game. Attempting to put it in my Genesis at first had been an eye-opening experience. The cartridge didn't fit. It was my first lesson that video game companies put barriers between regions to dissuade people from importing. I just dropped $100 to play Strider early, however, and I would not be denied. I opened my Genesis shell to gain direct access to the cartridge port, allowing me to play my new Strider game just fine. I was met with an opening title screen that mimicked the arcade nearly 1-to-1. My excitement level jumped up another notch as Strider flew in on his glider, again just like the arcade. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and hearing here. Strider had only been out in the arcade for a little over a year at that point, yet my Genesis was sitting here in my home playing a close rendition of it. Sega had internally developed this version of the game, much the same as it had done with Ghouls and Ghosts, needing the system's first 8 megabit cartridge to hold it all. The first stage is basically Strider infiltrating the capital city of the evil emperor, the Grandmaster, who you must find and defeat in order to save the world. You are Hiryu, a fast, nimble ninja that can climb on just about anything. You can also be powered up with robotic familiars, such as panthers and birds. This first area pretty much gets you used to navigating the gameplay. You'll face a few enemies and obstacles that let you get the feel for the attacks and climbing, but nothing overly challenging. The end boss of the stage is easy, just avoid his arms and attack his head. If you are powered up with a full complement of droids, they'll even do all the work for you. Stage 2 was a personal favorite in the arcade. The Genesis version nails all the important notes too, something that should please fans of the source material. You start out in this Siberian wilderness area tackling a few ravenous wolves, right before you infiltrate the enemy base guarded by a giant mechanical gorilla. Once you are done crushing him, you'll climb your way up and out of the base to do battle with a mini-boss that flies around you. Wait for him to get low before you attack, otherwise he'll just keep running from you. After you deal with him, you'll get to one of the most beautiful scenes in a video game at the time, Strider's descent from the mountaintop. I die here again and again just to see it over and over. It was a breathtaking run down a mine-trapped slope where stopping meant certain death. I mean, this impresses me even today. Just look at that awesome background layer flow as you run. It's epic. Once you clear the crevice, go into the next part of the base where you'll need to navigate the giant electrical beams that pulse between active and not. Get to the top and hitch a ride on one of the small ships to get airborne. You'll need to do battle ship to ship to get through this area, while bombs are floating down trying to hit you. Avoid these, as they will knock you off the ships if they make contact. Once you're at the main battleship, be careful jumping through the engines and gun placements until you're at the top level, where 3 ninja women will attack you. Defeat them and take control of the vessel to end the stage. The third stage sees you attacking one of the Grandmaster's most potent symbols of power, the flying battleship Balrog. This stage is a series of obstacles that start with gun placements and cannons. Once inside the ship, you'll need to navigate your way through moving platforms and then fight your way back to the surface. You'll enter your first anti-gravity area of the game here, including having to deal with a mini-boss that grabs you and swings you around until you destroy it. Quickly make your way out of the ship before the fire kills you, and deal with the ship's captain as he tries to escape. The next stage is the Amazon forest, where Amazonian women are ready to wipe our hero from existence. You will need to climb vines and trees to get through the first area, which then gives way to flat ground that has you dealing with dinosaurs and man-eating piranha. Keep moving and attacking to keep these beasts off of you until you get to the boss. I'm not sure what the hell this thing is supposed to be, but it drops in and begins attacking you with a huge claw that extends far out from its body. It also spits fire that flies around. The best strategy here is to hit this thing with everything you have as soon as it drops. Get in its face and unload. As long as you can take a hit or two, you should easily defeat it. Stage 5 is the final level in the game, and the main base of the Grandmaster himself. You start by fighting your way through the outer level of the area, not dealing with anything you haven't already seen. Once inside, you'll face the toughest challenge of the game by a mile, the dreaded upside-down reverse gravity room. This area is loaded with spikes and enemies that send you flying off the screen for an insta-death if you get hit. You'll likely need a few lives here to come to terms with how you have to tackle it. My best advice is to remember that only the drill portion of the moving spikes damage you, and that you can stop and wait for the best time to jump in certain areas. Once past the spikes, you face another one of those gravity wells, and you'll be spun around before being tossed into the wall and taking damage. Hit it with everything you have to get rid of it. Once cleared, you will move on through a few enemies and jumps before making your way to the gauntlet of bosses you must defeat again. Robotic Gorilla, T-Rex, and the Amazon boss all show up here, needing to be taken care of. Attack fast and be aggressive and you'll beat it in no time. After defeating them, the level 1 boss will show up and take you to the final battle. While taking this ride, the Grandmaster will gloat about his plans to remake the Earth as he sees fit, and create new life to inhabit it. It's definitely time to whoop this guy's ass. Once the final area comes into view, destroy the enemy that gave you the ride, which will immediately prompt your final battle with the Grandmaster. This dude is no joke and hits you with everything but the kitchen sink. Your best strategy is the same as it's always been. Be aggressive and unload on him right away. He will likely beat you the first couple of times, but once you find a good place to attack, you can drop him in no time. As Strider watches the Grandmaster's tower fall, I can't help but still be impressed by how close this game was to the arcade so soon after its release. I mean, for all intents and purposes, this was the arcade at home. Sure, there were some animations missing, the color was dialed back, and there was some slowdown and sprite flicker, but these things did not ruin the overall experience in the slightest. Strider was a hell of an achievement, and a huge part of my early Sega Genesis library. It started me on my journey of discovering Japanese gaming and importing, and was a product of my hard work and desire to know my hobby better. It would be followed by many more imports, many more unforgettable games, and ultimately me getting a Sega Saturn at its Japanese launch. But this first step burns brightly in my mind as the moment I decided to take control of my buying power and discover things for myself. It's never too soon or too late for anyone to step into a part of gaming they do not know well or have much experience with. As long as you have the desire to play it, it's never a wasted effort. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.